Hi guys, welcome to this video. I'm Prashant, a CAT VARC 9 times 99 percentiler, and I have this video for you which is going to change the way you approach reading, especially the way you think about it. I have the age-old question in front of us, whether you should read fast or whether you should read with accuracy. Should you take up speed reading? Should you try to consume content as quickly as you can? Should you just read the first and the last line of the paragraph and keep proceeding with the passages, or should you read each micro detail, understand the passage? What is it that you should do? Well, the answer to this question is a yes and a no both. Both these things have application, but the application is strictly limited to particular contexts, right? So first, let's do a quick comparison between these two styles of reading, where in one you read quickly, you apply speed reading techniques. In the other, you read word by word, line by line, and try to understand the content. Let's compare the two methods. Obviously, speed reading, you will cover more content in a shorter duration of time. On the other hand, accurate reading will be a thorough understanding and retention of information. So there is a comparison. There is an obvious natural trade-off which is happening. Quick overview, better for time management, identify key sections. This is better for complex ideas, answering questions, and crucial details. The key thing here is, which you've got to remember, is overview of passage structures. Quick reading enables this very, very quickly. But comprehension of complex ideas, where the complexity of ideas it increases, that is where careful, accurate reading comes into the picture. If you think very, very deeply about it, and if you ask yourself a logical question, the question here is, now the answer between these two types of reading is, this slide itself should give you the answer if you're using a few of your gray cells here. That means the type of reading I adopt depends upon the type of passage I read. Now, how do I decide which type of passage requires which kind of reading? The question is not which style of reading I should adopt. The actual question is, which kind of passage deserves what kind of reading? The mapping is the kind of passage, the type of reading required. That's the mapping that you've got to do. That's the actual question that should be asked. The actual question is, this is the I have to correlate types of passages with types of reading. That is where the trick lies in. That is the degree of detail that differentiates you from the others. Now, obviously, drawbacks, you would miss details, comprehension would be lower, you would risk misinterpreting content. With such drawbacks, on the other hand, you would lose a lot of time here. You might not be able to complete passages. So the plus and the minus, the pluses and the minuses of both these forms of reading are for everyone to see. What do we pick out of it? How do we derive the relevant details? How do we identify the relevant passages? Well, I can't keep you waiting anymore. The answer for this is very simple. You will realize the nature of complexity of the passage, right? That is what is determining, right, which kind of style of reading that you take. How do you determine whether a passage is complex or not? Actually, that depends upon your subjective reading experiences. There are a lot of passages that I would, for example, I'll take my own example, I would find very easy, right? Why? Because I have read a certain volume of content, I have read those topics. Let's say, for example, I am a major in economics. This is just a hypothetical example. I'm a major in economics. I would find economics related articles very, very easy. Someone with a science and technology background might find those very, very difficult. Most of us would find philosophy related passages difficult, unless and until probably we've got a bachelor in arts with philosophy as one of our subjects, right? So depending upon the type of content you've consumed, your reading output, it changes, right? So hence, it's very, very individual driven. Now, there is one more thing that comes into the picture. Inherently, because of our social and cultural experiences. For example, we live in India. I am an Indian. You guys are Indians. We are consuming a lot of content in the Indian context, right? And when we consume content in the Indian context, there is intense familiarity with news and events, and even their socio-political fallouts. Even articles which are opinion articles written on these issues are understanding of these matters would be far greater than, say, what is happening on the global scale, because we are not exposed to that information, right? So again, that means content that we are connected to, content that we follow, right? There might be some international topics that might be very interesting to us, and hence we follow them in far greater detail than the others. Content that we follow, content that we like, those are areas which enable us to read quicker, right? And content which is obscure to us, which we've not read, those are areas which require deeper understanding. So we'll take up examples of two such pieces of content. The first piece of content, we'll do quick reading for it. We'll apply quick reading, we'll read it quickly, we'll adopt fast reading practice. The second article, we will read it slowly and we'll analyze it carefully. So that's the thing that we are going to do. Let's do it one by one and try to understand how the content type varies and how it changes our approach to reading. So the first one is based on, it has a certain element of politics. This was taken in the Indian context. So I'll tell you the sources as well. I've taken this up from Times of India in India, right? And I have filtered down the first 3 paragraphs into a single paragraph, condensed it so that we can read it quickly. And this was essentially comparing the freebies in politics to the steroids which are consumed in bodybuilding, right? And if you think about it, now this is an easy topic to understand. Steroids in bodybuilding, quick results. Freebies in politics, quick results. That's the underlying comparison, and that's why the author is implying it, right? Now, such an article can be read quickly without spending time on every detail. So let's go ahead and try doing that. Steroids are to bodybuilding, what freebies are to Indian politics, essential yet damaging. Ronnie Coleman, you can leave out these details, right? When reading 8-time Olympia winner, you will not get such factual questions in CAT exam. So Ronnie Coleman admitted to using steroids to stay competitive. That won him titles, but severe health issues. So now I don't have to think very deeply about it. All I know after this first line is steroids, freebies in politics, Ronnie Coleman abused steroids, won titles, had impact on health. Similarly, Indian politicians feel compelled to offer freebies to level the playing fields as rivals do the same. However, while athletes bear the consequences of their choices, politicians do not, citizens pay the price. So in this case, the only point of difference is Indian politicians, again, comparative advantage, same as in the case of bodybuilders, they offered freebies. The only thing being, in the case of steroids, the bodybuilder himself, the person who's abused the system, he bears the consequences. The case of politicians, they don't, citizens do. Those freebies ultimately have a cost, right? This reckless populism, popularized over the past few decades since the rise of populist leaders and parties, has impacted economy, affecting people across all classes. So quick reading of this passage just tells me comparison between bodybuilders and politicians, comparison between the use of freebies and steroids, how this has an impact on the system, how ultimately it hurts the economy, affecting people across all classes. Now, if you think about it, this really does not require you to think very deeply about the topic. So we could have skipped details such as this. We could have, like, literally you could have skimmed a little of the content here to arrive at these details. And at no point of time were we required to stop at a particular line and think deeply about its meaning, right? What does it actually mean? Because the meaning of the line is self-contained itself. Would you agree that these lines themselves are explaining the meaning? There's no hidden or implied meaning. Does this mean that questions for this passage are going to be poor in nature? No. The questions for this passage can still be tricky, right? So for example, one of the questions can be the comparison between politicians and bodybuilders in this case, and I'm thinking on the spot here, in this particular case, is what? So is it a metaphor? Is it an analogy, etc., etc.? And I could further define it as well. Is it a flawed analogy? Is it a convincing metaphor? Is it figurative? Is it a juxtaposition? So there are complicated questions which can be formed with such simple content as well. That can happen. But this is the kind of content that you can breeze through. You can quickly go through. All of us know politicians offer freebie in Indian politics. You're given, for example, you're given free electricity units, you're given all these free subsidies, etc., etc. They have an impact on the economy. So those are all things that we are aware of, knowledge that we already have. Let's now compare this with an article from the Aeon. Another extract that I have filtered, and I have reduced it, condensed the couple of 3 paragraphs into a single one. Let's try reading these. This time, on purpose, I'll go slow, right? And I'll showcase to you what is slower reading live in this video itself. When I say live, that means while reading it, I'll go slow and explain side by side. The 17th century scientific revolution is often framed as a sign of triumph over medieval religious constraints, ushering in a secular naturalistic worldview. This here itself should make you think, what is a secular naturalistic worldview? Many of us would not know what this means. This is alien to us. A secular naturalistic worldview is one which is a secular worldview is one which is not driven by any religions. That is, it is not driven by any theology or any particular obsession with particular religions, and it's naturalistic in viewpoints. That means it's limited to the laws of nature. Remember, here we are talking about scientific revolution and naturalism. So naturalism in the context of science would refer to following the laws of nature, and the laws of nature determining outcomes in our world, not religion, right? Religion is not determining outcomes. Now, all of a sudden, we can see with the first line itself, the type of content has changed completely, right? Now, this is not these are not your everyday freebies which are being offered by politicians. Now, we are talking about something which is way deeper here. However, this interpretation is only partially accurate. So even this is not accurate. Medieval science, rooted in Aristotelian thought, viewed natural objects as possessing inherent causal properties, right? With God as the ultimate source of these qualities, but not directly intervening in their operations. So medieval science, what did it think of? It basically saw natural objects having causal properties. So natural objects having the ability to, when something has causal properties, that means it has the ability to carry out the cause and effect relationship. This cause and effect relationship was driven by God, the ultimate cause of everything happening. So for example, something happened in nature, you attributed the cause to something, then that cause might have another cause behind it, right? One thing leading to the other. The ultimate cause was still God. Medieval science, even though it explained all these natural causes, right? The ultimate cause was God was causing all these causes to take place. The scientific revolution, led by thinkers such as Descartes, Kepler, Boyle, and Newton, rejected this perspective, stripping nature of intrinsic powers and attributing all physical changes to external natural laws. So now, the scientific revolution led by these thinkers, it stripped, right, nature of all these intrinsic powers. This ultimate cause that God is causing everything, all that was taken away from it. And all we had was everything happens according to the laws of nature. Nature is an independent entity. It is not being handled, or it's not a puppet in the hands of God. It exists on its own, and it's functioning of its own will, its own volition. While this shift laid the groundwork for modern scientific inquiry, these early scientists were not fully secular or naturalistic in their contemporary sense. So even though this modern scientific inquiry was the groundwork which was laid, right? So medieval science, it had God as the cause, ultimate cause. Then they moved forward. The scientific revolution came into the picture in the 17th century. They stripped natural laws of that ultimate God cause, right? But these were still not 100% secular, right? Their understanding of natural laws was still intertwined, that was mixed with theological ideas. It still had a religious component to it, differing significantly from today's purely materialistic interpretations of naturalism. Now, in today's world, we moved into a form of interpretation where there are no theological connections at all. So we had medieval science rooted in theology. You had the scientific revolution in the 17th century, moved away from theology, ascribed natural laws, uh, and removed the association or connection with God. But still, there were some connections left. All of it was not removed. And now you have the modern day world where everything is materialistic in nature. Now, naturalism is pure naturalism, scientific naturalism, no connection to God. So, three different time frames. The concept of secularity in science, the removal of theological arguments, the God argument, the argument that God is the ultimate cause of everything. All those aspects are within this content. Simple question to you guys. How many of you read such content on a regular basis? We don't. Are we even concerned about this? Do we even think about this? No, we are not, because in fact, in our everyday lives, if we started thinking about these things, we would think that the person has gone cuckoo in his head. Why are we even thinking about all these things? So this is a topic which is rooted in philosophy, and specifically the philosophy of science here. So there's a huge overlap of topics: science, religion, philosophy. All of them are coming together in this wonderful piece. But you can see that if you skim through this passage like the way we rushed through the last paragraph, you would not at the end of this paragraph know that three distinct time frames are being spoken about, three different types of scientific approaches: medieval, scientific revolution, and modern day world are being spoken about. What do these three different things say? One is 100% God, the other is say 80-70% God, and now we've reached one is 100% God, the other is probably 10 or 20% God, and now we've reached a stage where we have 0% God in our scientific explanation of natural laws. So those three distinctions are there. So all of this understanding, you only do so by reading it accurately and very, very carefully. Now, how do you practice these kind of approaches? How do you differentiate between the two? So quick summary for you, right? You have to read different diverse topics that you are comfortable with. Supposing say Indian politics, content which is related to our context, or things that you read or related to our culture, you adopt fast-paced reading in those. Humanities, economics, or such complex topics, you go to accuracy-based readings. You keep building your knowledge, right? At the end of the day, we are building our knowledge base. There is no other substitute for that, right? You view vocabulary in context, especially in the last paragraph: naturalism, secularism, theology, theological arguments, God argument. These are all new things that you learn. These are not only words, this is vocabulary in context, underlying themes. There, you build your knowledge base by learning more themes. So now you know, after watching this video, you know there is a philosophy of science, you know there is a God argument for natural laws, you know there is secular science. All these things exist. Go explore them, read about them. If not anything else, ask Google. If Google is passé, it's no longer in vogue, ask ChatGPT bhaiya. But make sure you do and you learn. Practice identifying passage structures, patterns. Try to identify a few passage structures that you are very comfortable reading with, and content type as well. Remember, the type of content you should read faster, you are the best judge of it. You need to see which are the areas you are comfortable with. So you will have to make a list of those topics. These are the areas I'm comfortable with. These are the areas I'm not comfortable with. Spend time accordingly, right? So analyze and this tone, purpose, structure, patterns all becomes part of that analysis. And you analyze your accuracy of speed versus accuracy ratio, your responses. In fact, you should try it with a few passages, right? Even with areas that you are not comfortable in. Let's suppose it's a philosophy passage like the last one. You try to solve it using speed reading, right? And you try to read faster in it, and you see how your accuracy goes for a toss. So you've got to actually practically adopt it and see where is it that you can adopt it, where is it that you cannot. Unless and until you put it into practice, it is all gyan. Just gyan. That is what it is. And we don't want it to be gyan. We want you to learn after watching this video. put this into practice so that you improve as a learner and you improve your performance. One more thing before I leave you, right, is I want to give you a few free resources that you can use for applying these two types of reading, right? Free Indian resources for you to read right now. Times of India, the blog section, there is TOI Plus, which is locked. But on Times of India, there are some blogs which are there for you to read for free. Our article, which we had, was one of those free articles, right? So there is some good quality content. New Indian Express and Telegraph India, the opinion sections on these are free to read. So these are three areas where you can go and read content. In fact, Shashi Tharoor and Swapan Das Gupta, they write on New Indian Express. So you'll find some, and on Telegraph India as well. So go and follow these authors who write quality content on these websites. You'll be able to find resources there. For international resources, Aeon, Psychology Today, Guardian. Our second piece was from Aeon. So Aeon, Psychology Today, Guardian, they offer you these articles. Aeon is great for accuracy-based reading, right? Indian newspapers, especially some Times of India blogs and some articles on New Indian Express and Telegraph India, since they are connected to Indian context, that's where you can apply fast-paced reading. So that completes this video. It's actually a mini lecture in itself for reading comprehensions and teaches you a deep concept. I've tried to make sure that I pack in as much information as I can in this video so that you can derive the maximum possible value. Make sure you do leave your comments. If you have any further clarifications you leave it as a comment for this video. Thank you very much for watching this video, consuming this content and learning from this video. Thank you very much and happy learning.